Hey there, welcome to the Midlife Mavens, in the space where Martha Stewart meets spirituality mixed with a little bit of magic, a little bit of rediscovery of the self. I am your host, Cynthia, joined by my beautiful co host.
I am Denise, and it's great to be here today.
So, we are kicking it off with the episode of I Feel Broken, I'm Going Crazy. But before we start off, let's introduce ourselves a little bit more. Denise is a wonderful, wonderful Reiki practitioner, and I'd like to have her introduce herself and tell you how she got kicked off with the wonderful magic of Reiki.
Okay. So my name is Denise, and in my early 40s, well, actually in my late 30s, my mother passed away, and I kind of got to this middle point of life, and I was like, is this as good as it gets? And that's all that kept replaying through my head because I just felt like I was struggling with a lot of different things. My kids were getting older, they were getting ready to move out of the house. And for whatever reason, everybody starts talking about retirement when you're in your 30s and 40s. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even figured out who I am yet. I'm not even sure if I'm an actual grown up, even though I am the adult in the house, right? And so I found myself uh, facing a second divorce. And when I did, I was going off the rails, as they say, from, us Gen X, 80s and 90s babies and growing up at that time. But the other thing, or unhinged, as the kids would say today. And I really did. I acted like I was a college freshman away from home for the first time for about 3 years until I could no longer like sustain that lifestyle because it really was not a healthy lifestyle or anything like that. And I realized that that's when I needed to start coming back to myself and figuring out what it is that I want to share out in the world and how I want to be remembered by my family, what my legacy is to leave behind. I know a lot of times people talk about legacies in regards to money and fame and fortune and that sort of thing. But my legacy that I want to leave behind is about love and how we can really truly embrace our fellow humans and our families and operate from a place that makes sense to us and where we set those boundaries, not to keep people out, but to live a life we love.
I love it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So
And
I have always been a very intuitive individual from very early on with dreams and just a sense of knowing. But I would have to say that at midlife, it became about rediscovering my intuition. I had hit a wall, and it was a wall that I had built. So I had no one really to blame but myself. But after living for so long with other people's expectations or trying to fill a role or routines that just were not sustainable any longer, I realized that I had to start listening to my intuition again. I needed to stop putting the other voices, who were the wrong voices, ahead of my own. And it took a lot of pain and a lot of tears. And, you could say that it was a crisis, but after it has, transpired, I can look at it now instead of viewing it as a crisis, that I've instead seen it as a calling. And that calling is to return and rediscover my intuition, to rewrite the rules, to rewrite the roles, and to reclaim myself and my voice, and to also reclaim that this inner knowing that I've had all along, that it's what needs to be followed. So I really encourage everyone else, if you are going through it and you are feeling off the rails or unhinged, return back to that voice of yourself and not the expectations of others. You will find that you will feel a whole lot better after.
I love that, Cynthia, and it's so true because we get caught up in the people pleasing and the
Yep.
everything, everybody, people saying, oh, you would be good at this. And then you find yourself going down a trail that you absolutely have zero desire to be on. And yet here you are. And then you're like, how did I get here? And it's because you didn't trust your own knowing.
Yep, yep. That's 100% true. Of course, every time we feel like we've gone, on a path that maybe wasn't meant for us, we do wind up coming back to the place where we need to be. So we might not be on the right path in certain moments, but that's not to say that we can't course correct and come back to it. I really truly feel like every time you take a step off of the correct path, you learn something that puts you back on the right path and keeps you grounded. That's for sure.
It does. And it kind of brings us to, more than likely, the reason you're watching this is because something in you has cracked open. And so let me start by saying you are not broken at all. And I know a lot of times we kind of feel like we feel like we might be, losing our marbles or whatever it is. And it's not. We're being cracked open to start to trust our own intuition again. And it doesn't mean you're beyond repair. Like you were just saying, Cynthia, when you kind of feel like you've fallen off your path, you really don't, because we always learn something and we will never miss what's meant for us. We might take a little detour and take a little longer route around, but we get where we're meant to go, right?
Every time,
Um,
I believe so.
and then when you open up like that, that's when you get to decide what grows from that space. You get to choose somewhere along the line that you matter and you don't put everybody else's needs. I always like to use the airplane analogy of like, they always tell you to put your oxygen mask on first before you help anyone else. And just like with everything, you can't pour from an empty cup. So as you in because it was so ingrained in us to not be selfish and to put everybody else first. And once you get to midlife, the reality of that is even if you want to still do those things, you really become incapable of putting everybody else's needs before your own. At least that's how I felt, and
Mm.
I felt like there was something wrong with me because I felt like I was just being mean and selfish and I didn't care about other people. And that's really not true from the true sense of I didn't care. And and when you get to those crossroads and in the moment you stop living for everyone else and then you start asking yourself, who am I?
Yeah, those roles and those routines have like changed, and they were changing slowly, but they changed. And
Mhm.
they, might have had, empty nest syndrome, or you might have come across where, your job is no longer your job, or your spouse is no longer your spouse. All of these things start shifting and changing, and you find yourself really in a place of grief when it comes down to it. You're grieving the old, you're grieving the what you had expected it to look like in the future, and
Mhm.
that's okay that these changes are taking place. Redefining yourself really isn't about going back and making it look like it used to. It's about going deeper and making it look like it needs to, and how it needs to feel for you going forward. For myself, after my daughter went to college, I threw myself into just digging deeper into, things, doing things. My daughter didn't need me anymore. I'd been a stay at home mom for, nearly 2 decades, and I didn't know what to do with myself anymore.
Mhm.
And I was trying all of these things and trying to fill all these voids. And I wound up listening to the wrong voices. I wound up, not listening to my own intuition, not listening to my own heart. And I wound up hurting a lot of people along the way because I was so ungrounded, and I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore.
Mhm.
And really what I needed to do was just to stop and tell myself it's okay that this role has ended. It's okay to grieve that you aren't needed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's okay for you to take the time to be yourself and slowly learn, what does me look like now? What do I want her to look like? Instead of going cuckoo bananas and doing some things that, in some instances you can never take back. And I know that might seem a little like too far fetched, but everybody has like parts of them that when they become unhinged, they become unhinged.
That is for sure. And kind of to like piggyback on your story, one of the things that I think as we start to recognize everything is a phase and a stage, because I know when my youngest got married and then now all three of my kids were married, I was like, oh my gosh, my children no longer need me. And it was really a disconcerting place. And because I've had the opportunity to kind of go through those things first, I can now recognize that it's like they do still need you, just differently, right? And that's one of the things that I think we get to understand because when I was raising my family, I was able to work part time or not at all. So I got to have the luxury of both. And like you, Cynthia, I was like, oh my gosh, where am I? Where does this leave me? What's left, right? So this is where we get to give ourselves permission to rest, to rage, to rebuild from a solid foundation of what it is we want without getting everyone else's approval. We don't need to crowdsource every single thing we do every step of the way.
Oh my gosh. I love that. We don't need to crowdsource everything. Yeah. Yeah. Because we get lost in that, you
Yeah.
know, we wind up once again, putting other people's opinions above our own, or other people's needs above our own. You know, we're supposed to be allowing ourselves to
Mhm.
refine our voice
Right.
and what lights us up again.
Exactly 100%. And there are going to be moments in life where we do have to put other people's needs first. I know my mom got very ill when I was in my 30s. And like I said, she passed away. Gosh, it's been 23. So in 2002, she passed away, right? Well, at the time, I still had a 6-year-old and a 7.5-year-old and oh gosh, what was he, 12? So when she first got sick. So, you know what I mean? My kids were still so I'm helping my sister who really took the bulk of the responsibility with my mom because they lived in the same state in California. And I went back and forth between California and here. So if I hadn't, I just like you, I just felt like I was doing, and I didn't really have any solid foundation of where I wanted to be, which is why after my mom did pass, I was like, oh my gosh, who am I in the world anymore? And this is where we also get to honor that part of our old story and not let it define who we are.
Yeah.
And we're not too old or too late. We're more seasoned, we're more wise, we have more insight and information. And like you said, Cynthia, starting to really tap in and trust our intuition.
Yeah.
I know, that's something that I kind of ignored for a long time. And now that I bring that forward into each part of my day, I'm like, yeah, that's going to work, or no, that's not going to work. And I kind of have this cut and dry kind of stuff a
Mhm.
little bit more now than I used to. And it's not because I'm trying to be, oh, that's it, out of the way, but it's more of a understanding of who I am and what lights me up, and where did I silence myself? And now I'm ready to speak about
Yeah.
what it is that I love. And I know we have some similar interests as far as like our baking and our, decorating our houses and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, along with our spiritual practices.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I sometimes though I just wonder like Denise, how did we as Gen Xers like go from like being super, secure in our own individuality to now feeling pressure from outside, influences or social media? Like we thought we were seasoned and wise, and now suddenly we've gone into a state where we're allowing other people to influence our day to day.
Well, yes, because you know what? I think really what happens is, and I know you and I have talked, I like my house to look like a model home. I know you like yours too.
I do.
And I also recognize that's not how most people live, but I think because of those kinds of things, and then what we see on social media, and it doesn't matter what social media outlet you see this on, it looks like everything's perfect. Nobody talks really about what's really going on behind the scenes of that curated photo shoot, or
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. And going back to, like, if my mom was alive, she'd be 85 this year, or 86. She'd be turning 86, I think. I don't know, I'm not really good with numbers. And what did they watch that they felt like that they had to be perfect? Was it I Love Lucy? Was it the June, Leave It to Beaver? And were they following June Cleaver, and she had her pearls on and she was always, to the nines all the time? And how did we feel like this too, where we just constantly are comparing ourselves, and nobody's actually being truthful and talking about what's really going on, especially as we start to get to midlife. And I know a lot of women I know are having children later. So you're also now kind of feeling this perimenopause with a toddler. It's like,
Yeah. And
and
now
both of those are a lot.
I know, and now you're opening up social media to see like how am I supposed to be doing this, because I'm not sure what this looks like anymore, and you're being bombarded with people whose homes look perfect and whose, um, skin is amazing, or their bodies are amazing, or their child is perfect and amazing, or they've, sat down and they've made dinner, this beautiful dinner every single night, and here's their image of that. Everything that you see on social media is curated. It's somebody's highlight reel of how they want you to think their life is. And but then it puts this like little message inside of you that's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to look like that too, and my life is supposed to look like that. I
Totally, because I can remember when I was raising my kids and I was working with, women that were also raising their kids. I can remember like it was yesterday, and we'd be like, I stayed up till midnight last night, and I got up at 5 a.m. and I went hiking and I did this, and then I took the kids here and I ran 42 errands and blah 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 blah, and then I made dinner and then da da da. And the reality of it is that it's not a competition. We felt like if we stayed up later, got up earlier, or did more things than somebody else, somehow that actually defined our self-worth. And that's really not how we define our self-worth.
No,
Busy,
no,
busy, busy doesn't
it's
get you where you
it's
need to
not.
go.
It's not. It's not the way to define your self-worth. It's not real life. It's curated, it's filtered, it's edited. It's meant to look how they want it to look. And then you wind up feeling like you're a failure. Why aren't you perfect like all this stuff that you're seeing online? I mean, it's downright exhausting. And so when you get to a certain age, whether that's in your 40s or that's in your 60s, you wind up realizing that you're tired of chasing this happiness based on somebody else's approval rating of you. And whether it's a stranger, whether it's a friend who's really just an acquaintance, you have to like finally let go of that perfection and just shoot for authenticity. And with that authenticity also comes vulnerability, of like, hey, yeah, come on over for coffee. The dishes are, haven't been put away yet, or my kids, school equipment, and soccer stuff is still out here, waiting for this afternoon. Like, you just have to realize that life is messy. It's made up of messy moments. And it's really about, I feel like, we really need to return back to a place of like connection and authenticity rather than this distance and this performance. I know for me, like, I'm not one to chase trends. I'm being a Virgo. I'm very like, I think I like things classy and timeless always. And so like right now, I'm not going to chase the trends. I mean, for crying out loud, stirrup pants are back in style, and I'm not buying it.
Some things we should have never worn and we should still not.
I agree, and I'm going to go with that one, the stirrup pants. And then I saw something the other day that was like, life is just watching pants go from baggy to skinny to baggy again until they put you in the dirt.
Exactly. 100%.
And I mean, you could ask your mom, you could ask your aunts, anybody that, what did pants look like back in your day? And it's going to be some iteration of something that you've worn in your time, or that it's, been in the store in the recent days.
1,000%. So, and it's funny because when we talk about that, as we age, our bodies change. Because I can remember, women that I worked with that were, maybe 10 years older than I am. And you know what? And that's, relatively speaking, it is a big difference and it's not. You get to a point where it doesn't really matter. And at the same time, they were like, oh, everything's going to change. And I'm in my, 20 or late 20, early 30s-year-old brain. I'm like, I exercise all the time. I eat right. I do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. And then the reality of it is it does because, because we just keep trying to fit into a box, right? I mean, who didn't have like the yoga pants with the giant t-shirt and, all that kind. And then we just became kind of, I don't know, lazy and messy because it was acceptable. Like, I'm going to date myself here, but I can remember, when I flew on a plane, which was very rare because it was so expensive when I was a kid, you got dressed up like in your Sunday best to get on a
Mm-hmm.
plane. And now I see people and I'm like, I don't think you have to always get to your Sunday best, but could you do something else besides wear your pajamas and your slippers on a plane?
Yeah, I'm
You
with
know?
you. I do not like the unkept look. You're traveling. You're going somewhere new. You are shifting your astrological timeline into a new place. Don't show up in that new place in your pajamas.
Right.
You want to be
Exactly.
comfortable. That's fine. Wear comfy pants. Like, I,
Absolutely.
my airplane outfit is actually linen pants and a loose blouse, so that I'm comfortable and I'm not cold. And you have to wear simple shoes because sometimes that airport wants you to take them off. Sometimes they don't. They can't make
I
up their
know.
mind these days. But yeah, I'm all for it. I don't care what age you are. Putting yourself together actually, like, on the outside makes you feel put together on the inside.
It does. And your wardrobe needs to reflect who you are now. Like the things that I wore in my, 20s and 30s, I'm not going to wear now. Even if they fit, which they don't, but even if they did, you know, it's just things that I'm not going to wear anymore because I remember I had a friend one time, she looked adorable and she's like, yeah, she goes, this might be the last time I wear this because she's yanking on her skirt. She goes, because I feel like my clothes are wearing me instead of I'm wearing them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is such a perfect analogy, right? And you get to be unapologetically you. So if you want to wear the big giant necklace, or the giant earrings, go ahead and do that.
I
Focus on
think,
what makes you feel good, things that make you feel amazing, luxurious. We don't all have to strive to have six-pack abs if that's not what we're going for. Now, if you want to do that and you're willing to commit to that, by all means. Now, would I like to have them? 100%. Am I going to do the real work that's going to take to get me there? Probably not. Probably not. So you got to just get into there with whatever's working. Now, I have a day job and I work at a middle school, and the kids, the girls are always complimenting me on my earrings. They're like, "You have the best earrings." Well, those are the things that I did keep from the 90s and the 2000s, and I'm like, "Those are actually vintage." One of my favorite vintage things that I have are my sunglasses. And I get so many compliments on those, right? So it's like, what makes you feel good, right?
yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I'm all about the accessories. Like you could just have on like something simple, white t-shirt and jeans. And if you've got the big earrings on because they still fit you from the 90s, God bless you.
Right?
Yeah. Whether it is your sunglasses, it is your big earrings, whatever. I personally am all about like, I want to accentuate the good things about me. I don't want to highlight that, I've gone from a beautiful hourglass into just an apple shape. It is what it is. So let's accentuate the things about myself that I'm not being critical about. And that would be, I still have a great smile, I've got a cute little dimple. And so I want to attract like the attention this way, not this way.
100%. I love that.
And then that makes me feel confidence because, you know, that's I think that is the key. And I love that. What your friends say? My
I
clothes
wear
are
my
wearing me.
I feel like my clothes are wearing me instead of I am wearing them.
I love that. I can go in my closet right now and there's probably about like half a dozen outfits that feel that way.
I know. And I think also then kind of bringing that back to it's like, okay, so like I know myself as well. I have clothes hanging in the closet, and if it's like I have to really ask myself, okay, if they were to fit, if I lost that 10 pounds or whatever, would I actually wear them? And if the answer is no, that's where you need to take the energetic space out of the closet to make space for new things that suit who you are now and who you're becoming. And there's nothing wrong with who you are now. We're always evolving, we're always growing. We're spiritual beings here learning and growing. And that's how we get to where we're going. And what I wore 20 years ago isn't what I'm comfortable in now per se, right? Or maybe it is. But where do we want to fall into that to where we can live our truth in what's age appropriate for us? And it's not about being appropriate for other people. It's about what's being appropriate for you. Getting that confidence. That's the ultimate accessory. That is something that never goes out of style. And I think when we were following everybody else's narrative of, oh, da 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 da, and you get kind of sucked up into the group herd mentality, right? Then we aren't really living true to who we are. And so once we start to really live to true to who we are, that's where our accessories, where we want to accessorize ourselves, come into play. And we get to truly live from a place of authenticity and love.
Yep, because confidence never goes out of style, and neither do dresses with pockets. I have to say,
100%. If it doesn't have pockets, why do we even have them?
no, don't buy it.
I actually went wedding dress shopping with my daughter and soon to be daughter-in-law, and she found a dress that had pockets. I'm like, that's the one then.
That's the one. That's the one. I agree. I mean, look back at I Love Lucy. She's like vacuuming the floor, and she has pockets in that beautiful dress.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah,
See, when did pockets get out of style?
I don't know. Whoever decided that was dumb.
Well, that's because they made pencil dresses and pencil skirts and there was no room for pockets.
The 80s. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember.
because we didn't even have pockets in those big shoulder padded jackets.
Well, because then we had the blazers with the deep pockets. And the
Right.
blazers. All right, folks, thank you for being here with us.
And we would love to ask you to like, subscribe, comment below any topics you would like to know anything about. We would love to get input from you. If you have anything that you want to add, we would love to hear you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye. Thanks.